Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is Congresswoman Michelle Fischbach. Congresswoman, thank you so much for coming on once again.
Oh, thanks for having me today. I appreciate the opportunity.
Tuesday night is a big night, the first vice presidential debate between Senator J.D. Vance and Governor Tim Walz. He's your state's governor and will be on the national stage Tuesday. So what do you think the American people should expect to see?
Well, I will say, I think that Senator Vance is going to come out swinging. I suspect the Walz will too, but I think they're going to come out swinging. And I think, Walz isn't really used to being pushed on his record. The Minnesota media generally is very favorable towards Democrats, and so he's not used to being pushed. So I am hoping that that Senator Vance really pushes him on those on his record.
What issues do you think he should push him on as someone who's experienced Walz more so than the rest of the country? What do you think? What would your advice to Vance be?
Well, I think it's important that the country gets to know what Walz is all about. And I think, we can talk about that $17 billion deficit that he spent, plus added $10 billion more to taxes, that he has, that there's all kinds of fraud and things going on. The taxpayers were defrauded about $250 million under his watch, which he's already been called to the subpoenaed by the House Education Committee to talk about that lack of oversight. There's all kinds of things, the overregulation, the COVID shutdowns, including snitch lines. Those are the kinds of things that the American people should hear about and understand about Governor Walz, and what Senator Vance really needs to push him on.
Your colleague, Congressman Tom Emmer, has been standing in for Walz in Senator Vance's debate prep. Have you talked to Congressman Emmer at all about that? Do you know anything about the debate prep you would like to tell us?
I talked to him beforehand, and I think he was excited to get to work, and I'm sure he did a great job because it makes sense. They serve together in the House. They're both from the same state, and I think that Tom probably had a very special understanding of what would get to Walz and how JD should prepare. So I think it was a great choice.
What do you think would get to Walz?
He really, in his 2022 gubernatorial debate, his opponent really pushed him on his positions, pushed him on the COVID shutdown. And if he pushes him, he becomes very agitated. He can't, if JD Vance pushes him, he may very well lose his temper, because he became very agitated in that 2022 debate when pushed on those issues, when asked for real answers instead of his folksy kinds of answers, but really talking about what he believes in and what he is going to promote.
I know that you have issues with Walz when it comes to policy, but the American people do seem to like him, at least so more than Vance. In multiple polls rather, Walz is winning double digits when it comes to likability over Vance. Do you think Vance has a likability problem, and does that concern you?
I will tell you this. I think that Walz right now is on a honeymoon because the people don't understand. The people of America don't understand what he really is about. I mentioned the taxes. I mentioned the oversight and the defrauding of taxpayers that happens under his watch, and the all kinds of overregulation that he did. I think what those polls are showing is that the American people don't know what Governor Walz is all about yet. The people of Minnesota do, I will tell you that, because and when he calls rural Minnesota just full of rocks and cows, that's the example. He right now is being made this moderate, made this folksy kind of good old fashioned high school coach, but that's not really what he is. The American people need to understand that.
Those polls also show that Vance is disliked by the majority of voters. Do you think that's a problem, and how does he become more likable on that stage tomorrow night?
Oh, I think Vance he is excellent at he thinks on his feet. I think he will be able to show the American people what he's really about. He is the American dream. Born poor, joined the military, joined the Marine Corps right out of high school, worked his way up, and where he is now in the U.S. Senate. And I think that the American people will come to understand what J.D. Vance is about, and that he is about helping the American people.
Tomorrow night is a time, really, for Senator Vance as well as Governor Walz to show the American people who they are. And as you know, Vance has made some comments about women in the past that have really upset that demographic. I mean, childless cat ladies has become a rallying cry of the left this election. How do you think he makes it up to that demographic tomorrow?
Obviously that comment was sarcastic, and the liberal media decided to run with it and made it a much bigger story than it ever was. And I think that Senator Vance can answer for himself and has responded to that. And I think that it needs to be taken as it was meant, which was a sarcastic comment.
He's made multiple comments, though, regardless. If we put the childless cat lady's comment aside about women and parents in general, he said parents should have more power than people who don't have kids. He said raising grandkids was, quote, the whole purpose of the postmenopausal female in theory. If he's confronted with those comments tomorrow, how do you think he should respond?
I'm sure that he will have a response for those things. He will have to make that decision on how he's going to respond to that. He thinks well on his feet, and I think that he will have legitimate answers for all of those.
He's also been critical of former President Trump in the past. Most recently, last week, the Washington Post found that he said in 2020 that Trump, quote, thoroughly failed. And in 2020, he predicted he would, quote, probably lose the election. Do you think he has to explain that past criticism at all on the debate stage?
I think the only person to explain anything to was President Trump, and President Trump chose him as his running mate. And I think that answers the question.
And what do you think a win looks like for Vance tomorrow?
I think that if he makes sure that he gets his policies out, he is understood by the American people, that's a win. And he makes sure that the American people understand what Governor Walz is really, truly all about.
I do not want to just look at the wider 2024 race and the presidential race in general. Polls indicate that Harris and Trump are essentially tied in the battleground states. What do you think Republicans' messaging should be in the final stretch leading up to the election?
I think we need, and we have been, and President Trump has been talking about it, is the economy. Are you better off than you were 4 years ago? The 2017 tax cuts are expiring in 2025. Harris says that she wants to let those expire, but you know what that'll do? In my district alone, 7th District of Minnesota, that will raise taxpayer taxes about 25%. You know what? We can't have that. And that's what we're all about, is making sure that people keep money in their pockets. And that's what we should be talking about, because people are facing, higher prices, higher taxes all across the country.
And in the theme of our conversation on a debate, do you think Donald Trump should debate Kamala Harris again? I know she's called for another debate. He has said he is not going to. Do you think that the country would benefit from seeing them on stage again?
Early voting started in Minnesota and in other states across the country. It may just be too late. And I guess President Trump will just have to decide what he wants to do with that.
And Congresswoman, what are you looking for next between now and November 5th? I know early voting already started, but what are you looking for come Election Day?
I'm looking for a Trump win, because I think it's going to happen. I think that the American people are smarter than Harris gives them credit for, because what she continues to say is she's the candidate of change, but what she's about is the last 4 years, and that's higher costs, higher taxes, overregulation, energy dependence. And I think what we're going to see in the next few weeks is we're going to see the American people understand what that's about, and a Trump win in November.
I know immigration is also a top issue facing voters. She did visit the border over the weekend, and she said this: I will reach across the aisle and I will embrace common sense approaches and new technologies to get the job done. What do you make of her comments and her visit there?
Well, my question is what does all that mean? Vice President Harris is really good at word salad and really good at saying words that don't have really a whole lot of meaning. And I think visiting the border last week is a little, too little too late, because she was the border czar. She was in charge of the, whatever you want to call her, for years, for the last 4 years. And this is the first time she's visited. She obviously, Biden, Harris, Walz, they all want open borders. They want open borders because if they didn't, they would be shut.
She did say strengthening our border is not new to me, and that's one of her priorities. When you hear that, do you think that's not consistent with your belief?
Well, she's been part of the Biden-Harris administration for the last 4 years, and actually reversed, when they first got into office, reversed some of the border security that President Trump had in place. So if that was really a concern, they could have done something the last 4 years, but they haven't. They've loosened it even further.
Her response to that is consistently, well, former President Trump was the one who killed that bipartisan border deal. What do you think of her reaction?
The so-called bipartisan border bill that they promoted really didn't do what we needed to do at the border. Yes, they can say over and over that that was the solution and it was bipartisan, but you know what? The House Republicans had HR 2 that they could have taken up at any time. Coming in at the last minute, and they were in power for 4 years and didn't do anything about it with this last ditch, kind of fake border bill that they had that had more to do with foreign aid than anything. It doesn't seem honest with the American people.
Well, Congresswoman, we will certainly have our eyes on the vice presidential debate on Tuesday night. I'm sure you will too. And I hope you come back and join me between now and the election so we can discuss new developments, because there is news happening every day. Thank you so much for joining me.
Absolutely. Anytime. And thank you so much. And you have a wonderful day.